George Benson is widely considered to be one of the greatest guitarists and singers of all time, and my personal guitar hero. He's most well known for his breakthrough album Breezin' with Warner Brothers Records, and went on with them to record hit after hit. And now Benson's back with Warner Brothers with another album that I think you'll agree is an instant classic. But first, I'm extremely honored to share with you all that I was given early access from Mr. Benson and his management team to this album so that I could share my thoughts and in-depth analysis of this album and his guitar playing throughout. This video is not sponsored, and they did not get to see this video before it was published. However, they were generous enough to give me a few of his LPs of this album so that I could give them away to a couple of you guys watching this video. All you have to do to enter is like the video, subscribe to the channel, and then comment below what your favorite George Benson album is. That's it, and you'll be entered to win. Let's talk for a minute about what makes this album so special and how it almost didn't even happen. Back during the height of George Benson's success, he wanted to do something he had never done before, which was record an album with a full symphonic orchestra. He already had a ton of commercial success, but he wanted something new, something challenging. So he asked Quincy Jones, who is the baddest cat around? Who should he work with as an arranger?
He said, George, don't worry about a thing.
And Quincy recommended working with the arranger Robert Farnon and the London Symphony Orchestra.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Robert Farnon.
So that's exactly what Benson did. George Benson and Robert Farnon agreed on the tunes and got everything written out. But when it finally came to be in the studio and record, George Benson's listening to this whole orchestra. He goes, oh no, I'm not going to be able to do this. That whole experience of listening to an 87-piece symphonic orchestra left Benson speechless. And so he decided to just sit back and listen and absorb what the orchestra was doing. Take a moment to think about the confidence in yourself and your musicianship, to just realize, I actually don't know what to do here, and I'm just gonna sit back and listen. Over the course of a few days, they recorded 17 songs, recorded by the legendary Al Schmidt, who also was an engineer on Breezin'. Well, Benson went back to New York, and he agreed with the record company that they're going to wait to put this album out until he's ready. Years and years go by, and everyone forgets about this project. It goes missing in a warehouse. Benson ends up signing with other record companies, doing other projects, but always wanted to finish this album. Well, 35 years after originally recording those sessions, this long-lost treasure from Benson during his peak era is finally available. There are honestly so many great elements to this album that I'd love to discuss, but I'm just gonna focus on three, and that's the orchestra, George Benson's vocals, and of course, George Benson's guitar playing. We're going to do a deep dive analysis of his guitar solos throughout this, and I'm gonna share with you the PDF transcriptions that I've done over this past week, and I'll tell you how to get those if you stick around to the end of the video. So the name of this album is Dreams Do Come True When George Benson Meets Robert Farnon. So it's only appropriate that we also focus on Robert Farnon's contribution to this album because it is very incredible. The first thing that I want to bring to your attention with what the orchestra is doing here is how harmonically interesting everything Robert Farnon has done. And so let's just play the opening track of this album, At Last, and let you listen in to how this starts.
At last, my love has come along. My lonely days are over, and life is like a song.
So there's a lot going on here, but listen in to what is done with the orchestra answering what Benson is singing. It's super interesting and definitely worth a few listens through. The second thing here that is really great is there's so many dynamics to each of these tracks. Most of the music nowadays is very compressed. It's all kind of one volume and like really in your face. And you don't get that in this album. There's very quiet, intimate parts with just a few instruments. And then we get into a whole build up into a full orchestra. It's one of the benefits of having a full orchestra is you really have a wide dynamic range available. You can have just a couple people, Benson just singing with maybe an instrument or his guitar, and then all the way up to the full orchestra. And they really take advantage of that in this album. It's very exciting to listen to and feels like something that is from maybe not a better era of music, but something that is missing in today's music. And then the third thing in regards to the orchestra is just the arrangements themselves. So the way that we're used to hearing a lot of music can be very obvious, very expected. And I was really surprised by many of these arrangements where we just totally take away a lot of expectations. For example, on the tune My Romance, Benson just starts off with a whole first chorus just upfront solo, which I was blown away by. It's just not everything in this is melody, solo, melody out, intro, outro. There's such variety to the formats of these tunes, to the tunes themselves, different structures. We have a couple tunes that are in 3/4, giving us different feels throughout. They really thought out how the whole album and the arrangements of each tune are constructed. Now let's talk about Benson's vocals. This is like peak Benson. His vocals are incredibly smooth. He sounds great on every single track. There's a lot of tunes which really showcase his ability to just sing up at the top. I really enjoyed that throughout. He's got great song choices on this. So, we have a lot of classic standards, jazz standards. We have Autumn Leaves, My Romance. You have some more like traditional classics like At Last. We also have pop classics like Yesterday. He's even singing the Leon Russell tune, A Song for You, which is famously a song that Donny Hathaway sung. But the interesting thing there is the Leon Russell tune that he's also known for is the first one he sang on, This Masquerade. So there's like a little bit of a nod to Benson's history in this album itself, in the song choices that he made. And then finally, there's a mix of genres that Benson's singing on. So we really get a whole variety from like more R&B styled things to classic jazz to the pop type of classics, almost even like a soundtrack sound where one of the tunes sounds like it's like leading you into a James Bond movie. It's really, really cool. You get a wide variety and it's just fun to listen to throughout. And now we're at the part where we're really going to dive in deep, and that is Benson's guitar playing. The three things I want to focus on in these next solos we're going to dive into is his great melodic playing, the way he trades solos with the orchestra, and then finally some of these amazingly virtuosic cadences that he just kind of teases at the end of some of these tunes. We're going to dive in with transcriptions that I've done and really show you musically why these work and how you can apply it in your own guitar playing. It's going to be a ton of fun. Stick around so I can show you where to get those PDFs as well. One of the very first songs that beginning jazz guitarists get recommended to learn is Autumn Leaves. And this might be one of the best solos, jazz guitar solos at least, on Autumn Leaves. Just one chorus through, and there's three things that I want to focus on here that'll really help you. The first one is the way he just plays a very melodic solo. So let's listen to Benson's opening phrase. So right there, everything that's getting played, all of the great melody of that phrase is diatonic to the key. There's nothing he's playing there that is outside of this key of B flat, and Benson does play this in G minor, not E minor, so that should settle that debate once and for all. But it's all very flowing throughout these four measures. It's not like he's playing a 2-5-1 lick going from the C minor to F7. He's playing a melody. So that's the first thing I want to bring to your attention. The second part of this solo that I think is really important to understand is the importance of note choice. And so let's listen to this part over G minor and listen to the note that Benson focuses on. I'll play it for you and then we'll kind of analyze what's going on here. So we're at this end part of the first A section on Autumn Leaves, where we we go to G minor 6. And Benson really focuses on that 6th note, that E. I'll play that slowly for you. So throughout this solo, you really get a sense of which notes that Benson's picking to really emphasize parts of the harmony. Really important and a great skill to have as an improviser. And then the third thing is that Benson plays some really interesting fast arpeggios, something I discussed in one of my previous lessons. But let's take a look at 2 very specific ones and how he's using a combination of arpeggios that might surprise you to really make this work. Here's the first one. Okay, so this is on the bridge leading into the next C minor F7, and in that spot he's really implying a G7, but what he does here is the tritone substitution of G7, which would be D flat 7, and we get a combination of D flat 7 and then G triad leading back into G minor. So this kind of slide down into D flat 7 arpeggio. And this is the important part, is we're not playing that D flat 7 arpeggio twice. He switches the arpeggio in the 2nd octave, which keeps it way more interesting. And then G minor, but over a C minor chord. There's one more interesting fast arpeggio that Benson does that comes right after this that I want you guys to know. And this is over the F7. Let's take a listen. So over that F7, he plays this, resolving to the 3rd on B flat major. So what do we have here? A half diminished, E flat, half diminished over the F7. Pretty common to do, half diminished chord over that. And then leading into like an F augmented, which lets him set up to the resolution of D. So we emphasize that D flat, resolving to D. Again, we have a 7th chord arpeggio leading into some sort of triad, just like in the other one we did. But this time, minor 7 flat 5 and augmented. Since this is an album where Benson's playing with the orchestra, I thought it'd be really interesting to analyze how does he solo when he's trading with the orchestra. So on the tune Pretend You're Happy, he does this. And I think it gives us some good insight on how to play and respond in a trading situation or when you're actually playing with a bigger band, whether it's a big band or an orchestra. So let's take a listen to this first part. And the first element I want you to focus on is Benson's classic pentatonic and blues ideas. And he still uses that even when he's playing with a full symphonic orchestra. So let's listen to his opening phrase here when he starts trading. All right, so what we're doing here, this is in D flat, and a lot of the times on this progression, it's really like a 1-5 or 1-2-5, and the progression is very straightforward. So we're here in this B flat minor pentatonic or D flat major pentatonic box, and Benson basically walks up that pentatonic from A flat, but then when he gets to that E flat, he starts using that blues note of the E natural and continues using all that chromaticism until he gets back to the 5th, the A flat. So you can think of this whole idea within this octave, A flat to A flat. Starts on a low A flat, and then chromaticism until we get to a high A flat, back down to A flat, up to B flat, as like kind of a little ending thought. So that's the first part of that blues phrase. The next phrase in response is responding not only to the orchestra, but also to what he just played. And this is over the 2 chord, E flat minor. And he kind of takes that same octave shape of A flat to A flat, but from B flat to B flat. And he plays a different idea. It's like, what a beautiful melody there. So we can take that blues lick and then respond to ourselves. When the first one ascends, the other one descends. The second thing you'll notice here is Benson's use of rhythmic and melodic motifs. It's especially important on this when he's trading and he needs to develop sort of a secondary melody to what the orchestra is doing. Let's listen to this part. So just even listening to that, you hear the same phrase repeated with a little change at the end. So that phrase of, and then another note, right? So we get it's rhythmically the same. Then we change to this B flat, A flat with the high F. Same, but now to E flat. Same, but to C. Where does your ear want to go? And that's where he goes. So the third element here that is really cool is his descending chromaticism. And there's one phrasing here in particular that I think really brings across this point. It shows you how he thinks about descending chromaticism to allow him to target certain notes and get to where he wants to go. So let's listen to this phrase and I'll break it down for you. So this phrase is over E flat minor, starting off on E flat minor. And we get this first descending chromaticism, basically going up to the ninth of E flat to target the root. Right, and we land on that as a emphasis target note for that E flat. Then we have another enclosure, a little back and forth between B flat, D flat to target C. At this point we hear a C7 in the orchestra. And then another descending chromaticism. We're about to go to D flat major. And so Benson just descends straight chromatically until we get to a chord tone of D flat, which is A flat over D flat major. So even just this first part of that phrase, before the phrase continues, you can hear how each of those descending chromaticism leads our ear into the chord. There's a lot more to that solo, but I'll save that for the PDF for you guys to get into. Before we run out of time with you, I want to take a listen to his ending cadence on One Goodbye. And this is showing off Benson's virtuosity. In this last 20 seconds or so, he rips through so many great ideas and lines that I just felt like we would really be missing out if I didn't talk about this. So this is the end of the album. This is the last phrase, cadence that Benson plays on this. And so it's appropriate we end with this as well. And this phrase, his opening phrase of this cadence, really shows you his harmonic mastery. And let's take a listen and I'll break down how many ideas he's going through in just a few seconds. Okay, basically 3 seconds and he goes through a ton. Let me play it for you slowly so you can really absorb all of that. So he starts off just hitting that low A over that A7 and playing within that minor pentatonic, right? So A, E, G, A, but then he hits the B flat and that tells us we got a little something different. And Benson's an expert at linking a bunch of different harmonic ideas and just smoothly weaving through it. What's this next idea? He gets into that B flat and he plays an E flat major triad. E flat major over A, which you might be curious about. It's coming from diminished, that E flat over A. He uses that as a little turning point to get to the next harmonic idea. So E flat over A, this A augmented. So A minor pentatonic, E flat major triad, A augmented, and then G minor pentatonic. Just for like a bluesy G minor chromaticism into that A flat. Just, I mean, that by itself is such a great little line. But he's doing all that within the span of 3 seconds. While we're on the subject of diminished, there's a really cool diminished pattern that Benson does that I want to show you guys a little bit later in this cadence. And it's one that you could apply pretty easily whenever you want to use diminished. So let's listen. So this is coming off of A flat diminished. You can think about any of these diminished that work for G 13, flat 9. So we're on a G13, treating it like a diminished scale. And so we get notes from that, and he's basically cycling through this diminished scale in a certain pattern, right? So we take a note from the diminished scale and go to the previous note in that scale. And then we jump up and then go down again. Jump up. Jumping up in a fourth while staying in the diminished scale, right? So I'm using my index and pinky. And then he basically ends it breaking the pattern, but still playing within the diminished. Stopping there. And for this last phrase, which I'm about to play for you, notice how he has such a great shape to this line. You hear that phrase a lot, this shape of the line. And what we really mean by that is how it ascends, descends, ascends, and in this case, just ascends and stays there. So we get a flow of going from like low to high to low. It gives us like a feeling of raising and lowering. And this is still over G, but he's using a G augmented sound, switching into a sound to resolve on C. Let's listen to this last phrase and listen for the shape of the line. This is a really, really fun one. So on the ascending side, we have G augmented. He goes to the ninth to slide into the third, up to the fifth. And now on the way back, doing generally 2 notes per string. Now we go to this B flat, kind of a standard G7 ending, right? Which you'd expect to go to E, but he skips down at C. And then it's like an enclosure, finally getting to the E. From there, 2 different arpeggios, E minor 7, and then a triad. So he likes this 7th arpeggio to triad. Right, he slows down there. Right, so E minor 7, combining into a G triad, G major triad, ending on that 7th. And that resolves on like a C6-9. Thank you again to George Benson and his management for giving me this opportunity to listen to this album early and share with you all my thoughts and analysis of what Benson's doing on this awesome album. Remember, you can win one of these copies of the LPs by participating in the giveaway. Like the video, subscribe to my channel, and just comment your favorite Benson album in the comments below. That's it. If you enjoyed this video, then I know you will dig my playlist of George Benson lessons, which you can check out here. And if you want to get the PDFs for this, you can check the links below, or just join Chase's Guitar Academy, where you can get all of my YouTube PDFs and courses there. So I'll see you guys in the next lesson.